Sanjay, and me and Eduardo, we started this podcast many months ago, and now we're back with another episode of Water Lobby to talk about issues facing our world around water and how we are personally being impacted and how we feel like we should, talk about this more and bring some of this to your attention. Maybe it slipped through the massive news cycle that's been coming week in and week out. So we'll go back and try to touch base on some of that. With us today is Liv. She's also a resident of Texas. Before I introduce her, um, I just want to say hi, Eduardo, and tell us about something uh, that's been going on in your life recently,
Good
Felice.
morning, Sanjay and Liv. Thank you for
No,
joining us today. Something that has brought me back to this show and to art in general is, have you been watching the news, y'all? There is a lot of things that will happen the rest of this year in regards to our money. Spring is coming. In San Antonio, it's a fiesta. And um, I'm really interested in this world, the water world. As I have watched the news, you said this, Sanjay, earlier, people are not talking about water as much as we should. We're focused on other things. And so that's been on my mind, is this talking about water as a natural resource that everybody depends on, and just water.
Yeah.
So
No,
that's what's been on my mind. Yeah.
so no discussion about rising oil prices and how gas is $4 per gallon. What's the oil price there in San?
it's 380. Yesterday I looked. Yeah.
Wow, 380. I think it's so I recently moved to Las Vegas and I think it's around 450 in Las Vegas. It's crazy. Yeah, it's higher because I think oil to get oil from California, so it's like super expensive.
Mm.
And
Yeah, I
live
mean, Texas is low compared to like most states, right?
oh yeah, Texas is yeah, definitely low. So um but because of all the oil we have and natural resources that Texas is blessed with. So Liv, welcome to the Water Lobby podcast. I'm
Welcome,
excited.
Liv.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So Liv,
What's
you
been
live in
on your
San Antonio.
mind, Liv, recently?
Um, so I mean, yeah, I've been hearing news about like Corpus and like data centers being built. Data centers pretty local to us, Eduardo, and uh, just contemplating like what that means for us as citizens and for future, citizens that we're bringing into this world. I'm originally from Ohio, so there's not the same kind of
Yeah.
discussions there that we're having in Texas. And then once I moved to Texas, I realized that like, wow, this is a really big deal for a lot of people. And where I was like a little bit blind to it before, now like it's very front and center. So I just want to engage in like conversations and trying to like organize people around doing things to make our environment and our quality of life better.
So when did you move to Texas? How many years ago?
So I've been here almost 3 years. Yeah.
Wow. Edward, I feel like you've been here the longest, like 30 years, 35.
Yes, I moved to and thank you for asking that, because I'm an immigrant.
Oh
So I
wow.
see a lot of news of immigrants on the news as well. And I've been here since I was 10. I'm 35 now, so 25 years in Texas. I love
Wow.
this state. It's interesting what you said, Liv, about being in another state. Because I've traveled to Colorado for
Mhm.
fishing trips, and people there say that it is different. Things are
Yeah.
changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder what observations y'all have seen outside of Texas.
I just moved to Nevada after living in Texas for 7 or 8 years. Time flies. I was like actually living close to University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and I could drive through this campus, and I'm like, I used to be a student like a decade ago. It just feels like so weird, like seeing that. And but in Las Vegas, I mean, water is definitely front and center. People, the biggest thing like in Vegas, if you ask anyone what they complain about is how much a bottle of water costs in a casino. It's ridiculous, man. Like it costs $15, or like at minimum you have to pay around $8 for a bottle of water, and depending on which casino you're in, you might have to pay like $15 for just a water. So that's something that's on everybody's mind who lives in Vegas. My one of my friend, he jokingly said like he would just go to the faucet inside the toilet and he'll just drink water there instead of buying a bottle of water. And I was like, this is actually really smart because people don't realize, but it's the same water that comes in and treat like goes to irrigation. It's the same water, like same treated to the same standards. So the treatment plant treats the water to the exact same standard, puts it in the river, gets pulled in, gets treated again for drinking water, and it's the same water that gets into our faucets, into the filtration systems, into the irrigation, and which is so you could theoretically drink the water from your toilet and you'll be fine. But I'm like, it's just like that stigma attached to it that it's hard to get over. But I might one day have to do it because these prices are ridiculous in Vegas. Yeah, speaking of, so what's been like Ohio? Like you said something about like, oh, you had a different perspective when you were in Ohio. What
Yeah.
was that? Tell me more.
Honestly, like I just didn't think about it much at all, and none of my friends really did either. Like, um, you would hear conversations about like environmental justice, like generally, right? Like everyone kind of talks about, but like you really like notice like people know that like their water is precious when you come to a place where like they have to think about like how low the aquifer is, right? Like it's just like a different like perspective on like that resource in particular.
Yeah, and um, yeah, aquifers recharge, especially the Edwards aquifer, in which it covers like San Antonio all the way to Austin. It's one of the like I feel like every country should just read Edward Aquifer rules and just copy paste it. It's very easy because the rules are very straightforward. They're not overly amplified, but I feel so. The basics is if you want to build anything in Edwards Aquifer, you have to release a report to the public saying that we're building it. It gives the public 60 days or 30 days to comment on it, and then you have to address those comments, and then you get to build it. And that's just in itself, it's very straightforward. Still very pro business, you should come build it, but just tell us that you're building it. And I feel like in many other states, a lot of things get hidden and never become public. And so just the awareness cycle, it is, naturally becomes slower. So maybe
Mhm.
Ohio needs that.
Yeah, maybe. I honestly couldn't even tell you if like there's something similar that exists. Maybe that's something I need to talk to my friends up there about. Like maybe I need to get them interested in water.
Edward, is there anything cool about Edward's Aquifer that you might know or remember?
I had a conversation yesterday with one of our officers, our continuing education chair, in EWRI. And the interesting part about our conversation, I was trying to make the point that water resources is the foundation of a stable economy, of a stable
Mm,
population. And if those water resources are not developed with conscience and with the people um, as the prime beneficiaries of maintaining the water, not necessarily commodifying it or monetizing it, then you will have a community. And so San Antonio has been a settlement since the 1600s, I
Mhm.
believe. It's even older than Austin, which is where
Yeah.
I do my, what is it called? My innovative engineering work is in Austin. That is like a computer center of Texas. But as a community of commerce and international exchange, the San Antonio rests on the Edwards Aquifer, and I think that what has made it an easy place to live, a cheap
Yeah.
place to live, because we are very close. We're like sitting on top of a limestone aquifer, and the water is there for pumping or for use and protection. So, what's interesting about it is that it proves to me, or it shows to me, that we have a very valuable treasure, if not the most valuable treasure. It's uh, more important than gold.
Yeah.
And it's also military city. So there's like a lot of uh, there's a lot of people on top of it, and we should protect it and defend it
Mm.
as much as we would defend anything. Our children will depend on it. Our ancestors thrived on it, and it's a heavy responsibility to be on such a precious area of America. That's the
Yeah.
way I see it. And yesterday's conversation was reminding of that, because I was like, yeah, if you don't have water, what are the roads for? Where are they leading to?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's something I think we're probably gonna touch on more like during this conversation about Iran because like it's just so basic, like, and it puts a lot of stress on like populations when like they really have to worry about if they're going to have water.
Yeah. So, I mean, last few months, I think it's been a little over a month since the assassination of the supreme leader of Iran and things that followed that. I mean, no one expected the first part to happen, but the following things that media were floated around, like potentially hurting the water infrastructure of Middle East from either sides of the war. Like it, I think it came from both Iran and
Mm-hmm.
also the side Israel and other countries where they talked about how um, the Middle East, as we all know, desert place, lots of oil, very less water. They have 6% of the world's population, but only 2% of the renewable fresh water.
Wow.
If we go back in time, the river Nile used to flow. There have been talks about how ocean was probably there at some point. The pyramids were probably made as a way to be protected from floodwaters. But over time, the desert has been expanding on all directions. Um, and now we're in a place where there are 100 million people, hundreds of millions of people who could potentially lose access to fresh water that is comes from desalination plants in Middle East. Um, some of the countries like Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, UAE, they from somewhere between 90% to like 50% of all their water resources comes from desalination plants. And one reason why I really wanted to, come back and do one bonus episode, I would say, of Water Lobby is because um, I think that's very concerning as somebody who works in this industry to hear about uh, people not having access to fresh water in places where there's already water scarcity. And while there are a lot of rich people who live there, there are a lot of poor people who come from all over the world. to build a future in those countries. They live in subhuman conditions with and it's pretty very so in United States we take for granted all the wastewater infrastructure we have, like we flush the toilet and the poop goes out, we open the faucet, water comes in. And if there's like in Austin, if you ask there was a survey, if you ask someone like, hey, where do you think the water comes from, like 70% of the people say Barton Springs, which is pretty great answer, honestly. Like, and if you ask in any other city, they would just say faucet. So
Mm.
but I think a lot of other countries, people have to think about this because they lack the wastewater infrastructure completely. In many countries the water infrastructure is very fragile, and I just hate hearing about it being mentioned in war, because throughout human history we've always said in a war we don't want civilians to be hurt. Every time there are all sorts of treaties that were signed by the world organizations about not hurting the civilians, not hurting any of the water infrastructure. But I feel like when um, every day I wake up and I feel like we're like hours away from a news that says, oh, this one, like 20 villages lost access to water because of um, a bomb that was thrown from an airplane. And yeah, I think that's just concerning deeply. Um, Eduardo, what have you seen, and how has it personally like hurt your morale about the future, hearing these news stories?
Thank you for sharing that, Sanjay. I also feel a sense of sympathy, understanding, and I would say love for people that are so tied to their water systems. I am here in Texas and we have a relatively more humidity and more rain per year. And I see trash on the ground and that hurts me. And then I look at, or I read about um, Iran. I have friends that are Iranian. I dated an Iranian girl when I was younger. And the poetry, the culture, the people are being stereotyped as terrorists, and that gives people like a carte blanche to accept any defensive posturing against a society across the world, which we have history with since the 50s, since the 70s. And my question is, are these relationships of benefit or are these relationships of exploitation? Um, and water has been an exploited resource by the people that own them because it's a valuable resource. And we, I hear the president talk about we're just going to destroy their whole party and we are going to take their oil and we're going to become millionaires. I don't see where water, culture, and safety are being considered. So I find this to be a bit of a cognitive dissonance. I find it to be double speak. I think this is not new. I think it's predictable what they are going to do, what they said they're going to do. That has been true. They will even do things that the military situation. It's a military situation. Um, they're going to attempt to bomb more. They've already done it. They hit a bridge, which
Yeah.
is like pure destruction of commerce. It stops people from, it wasn't even finished. So I find that to be a wasted effort and disrespectful. I I want to, I'm going to pay attention on the water resources. Yes, specifically, I I believe Iran's surface waters are similar to Corpus Christi, which is less than 10% at capacity. I see Iran as a image of what could happen to Texas if we are not careful with who we choose to manage our development process. Does that make any sense? I kind of see
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
as a parallel universe that we could follow. We're also like post site, like next to an ocean. They have a body of water for transport. And I don't think Iranians or Saudi Arabian populations are that different from us. I don't.
Yeah.
You
So
live? Yeah. Did
Yeah.
you already share, Liv?
No, not yet. I'm basically like on the same page. Like we, the American public, and I didn't believe it, but they tried to spin it in the beginning as being like this is a liberatory thing. We're trying to free the Iranian people from this regime, and like, yeah, sure, the way that you're going to do that is by bombing critical infrastructure for the people. Like it's never made any sense, but I don't think that like our government cares that it makes sense, right? So it's really sad just to know that like these people for decades have already been hurting when it comes to things like water infrastructure and sanctions, and then we we're just talking now about like exacerbating it and like quote bombing them into the stone age. Like this is terrifying to think that like there's also people who don't want to hold like our government officials like accountable for this. Like there's some people who support this, and I think we should be like very critical about anything like this that our government chooses to pursue, and we should try to be vocal and to stop it, right?
yeah, and there's a concept of day zero, which was first coined from South Africa, where South Africa came very close to losing all its water, meaning
Mm.
there would be zero water available for anyone, which is terrifying. If I was, um, for example, in Texas, the contrast is if there is a snowstorm or anything to do with snow and ice. You go to a grocery store, there's no water because people first thing they do is go to all the aisles and they take every single bottle of water that's out there. Like, and it becomes you can see like people big panic, and then in response they try to hoard it, and also um, the water supply lines they freeze and sometimes they break. But that's nothing in compared to what a day zero is. And there have been talks that in Tehran, which is one of the big cities in Iran, they are facing that situation where they might be close to day zero. Their dams that they have where they get water from, they are in single digit capacity. In contrast, in Austin, we have Lake Travis, and people have been seeing the water levels drop on Lake Travis, and they've been really furious, at least people that have been communicating with the people who do recreational activities like boating. They're like, where is the water? And compare that to the situation we're facing in Middle East, where there's no very less groundwater. There's single digit storage in reservoirs, and people are like constantly being having to fear where they'll get their water for tomorrow. And growing up, I grew up in India, and when I was I lived in New Delhi, which is a very populated city, and we had similar. We never faced like day zero situations, but we had like groundwater. So whenever there would be like polluted water coming in through the supply, you just pump it, and then you have water for the day or next day, and you basically rely on every bucket of water. And which situation has improved? drastically from when I was growing up. Now I think it's gotten better, but again, if you're living in the poorer areas, you might still be you are probably like still people depend on tankers. Like a tanker would come. It's like so many like ideas that are like not um, known in US where but it exists. Like if you live in like a remote community like Lago Vista, or if you live in a ranch, you have to like bring a tanker of water and
Mm.
fill it up. But there's like just contrasting so that people understand what the tanker means. But it's very common in like other countries where people have to basically borrow, purchase every bucket of water that they use for their entire day. And I feel like day zero is very scary. From that perspective, like what's like some of the growing up in Ohio and Texas
Yeah.
now, like what have been like your like closest, like some of the memories where you've been like, oh, I don't know if I'll have water. Maybe it was a camping trip. What was it?
I mean, in Ohio, like I just never concerned. Like the worst thing that like was really happening is like pollution in the Ohio River, right? Because I'm from Cincinnati, so it's like right on the Ohio River, and like everyone was like, oh yeah, like don't go in there, don't go like fishing there, like it's too dirty. But in Texas, like the first like memory I have of like coming here and being like, oh wow, like water's really a problem. And this is like before I really started organizing. Um, my husband and I, we wanted to go to Jacob's Well. And so we drove
Yeah.
like, I think it's like an hour to get there. And like, we have like our son in the car and we're pulling up and like, we're like, can't find this place. So we asked someone and they're like, oh, it's dry. Like there's no water there.
Yeah.
And they're basically like, I don't know when there's gonna be water. And that was like kind of crazy. It's like, wow, like this is like it's like a landmark, right? And I've never had to consider that like it may just be dry. And then coming to Texas, like during the summer, like wow, it just runs dry. Like that's to me that was like a culture shock. Maybe not culture, but it was a shock, right? Like it was like that's something I've never like encountered before, right? And then from there, like you start to think about like water systems and like where we get our water, the levels that like our aquifer is at, what type of restrictions we have on water currently. So yeah, that's basically like my first like time when I was like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, fun fact about me, I've been in Texas like 7, 8 years, and I've never been to Jacob's Well. And I really wanted to go last year, but I knew from the news that it was dry. So I just never made that drive because I was following the news. So that's another thing, guys. Like you should follow the news about waters because you might have
Yeah,
to waste 1 hour drive to any of
yeah.
your places. But I want to also talk about like Israel, and I saw recently a video about how Israel has innovated the art of desalination, and also
Before we move on to desalination, could I interject and kind of talk about the perspective of a woman living in Iran
Mm,
through this
yeah,
cycle of politics? Um, because this conversation is a very kind of male dominated dialogue in on the TV about our relationship to Iran, and I feel like we're not hearing women's voices on either side um talk about how is this affecting the family structure of females, the family structure of children, because and this is to me related to all of the layoffs that are happening. Like you're not laying off workers, you're laying off people.
yeah,
mhm,
You're laying off whole humans with connections. And in Iran, like the beginning of the war was we're going to liberate them
yeah,
and we're going to do a regime change for a violent regime that suppresses, you know, voices with violence, and there was that, you know, protesters were attacked and what is it called, unalived, in
Yeah.
the scale of an incredible scale that we haven't seen, we won't see in America. And there is a feminine perspective there, and I just wanted to bring that up to y'all's attention, is that this is a very male dominated space, and engineering is used to be a male dominated space. And so I see this from a feminist perspective. um as much as we should not go into war, we should at the same time uplift voices um, of the minority groups in all of our nations. I think that's true for America, certainly true for Europe and other other continents. Yeah, that's all I wanted to add.
And like uh, from what I've seen is usually in most countries, women are the ones who have to think about the water for the day. They are the ones who are using water for cooking, have to make sure that there is water for other activities, showering and stuff, for their kids and their family. And um, so, which is, you raised a very important point where we are talking about water issues in Middle East, where when we're totally missing like how it would impact the day-to-day life of someone who has to actually worry about their day's water in a situation if any of the infrastructure is impacted by the war.
I feel like what happens, and now that I've had like a little time to think about it, there's like the international dialogue of power, but then, and that's like international economics, but you also have home economics, which is in, I'm from a Mexican background, and we escaped Mexico because of domestic violence. And the way that these patriarchal societies can be is that the dad goes out and tries to find money and a place to rent, and then the mom stays home, or sometimes they don't have to work too, and then they come home and cook and take care of the children and go grocery shopping. And I feel that the interface of scarcity usually happens in the kitchen.
Mm.
And
Mm.
who's in the kitchen? It's like everyone except the dad from where I come from. Like it was always my grandma cooking, or my mom cooking, or my tia's cooking, or yes. So I feel like when we're running out of resources, it's usually a female who has to understand, has to communicate that to people. It's kind of like, well, there's no meat. Well, we're gonna have
Yeah.
to get by with this for dinner. Um, that's that's kind of where I think there's like international economics and home economics, and at home is where we really have the real effect of water. What do they call it? Water bankruptcy.
Yeah, and I could also, like, if you're a woman in like this situation where like you're expected to be home and not do more than that, like when you are faced with like some of this uncertainty and like these crises, like you're in a position where like you have to figure out, or you have to like, deal with like your children and your home, but like is there more that like you're able to do about that besides like tell like perhaps your husband, like you're kind of forced into a position where like maybe you feel powerless too about it because you're not like encouraged to like get involved and like do anything if there's anything to do, like if you're in the middle of a war and your country and your home is being attacked, there's not much for many people to do, right? And then you're just faced with like looking at like your children and being like, okay, well, this is a situation that I'm in. And that's scary.
Then, like, I mean, how does
Mhm.
one even like protect themselves and their families in this situation where um you are faced with like you know for a fact that there might be a day in like the next 30 days that you may not have water for your family. Like, how does one prepare themselves for that? Like, do you just hoard water in buckets? Do you try to like you like use less water by
Yeah.
conservation? Like, do you shower less and um cook food less? Like, what, Eduardo, what do you think? Like, how can one prepare themselves? Um, and then second, like, um, like what can people do by organizing for live? Like, if they want to like get together and they want to like maybe raise their voices in a TV show, or by protesting against or for their government or their community. Like, because you at this point, like when attention is scarce, like everybody's attention spans like 60 seconds, and
Hmm.
you want to quickly like make the world aware of your situation, because you know there's no help really coming from other countries. You have to make sure that you're standing up for yourself. How does one like organize to make sure that um, you are standing up for yourself? Because people don't have, enough power as individuals, but if they come together, they might have a chance to like actually raise their voice.
Yeah, I feel like the first step, right, is getting with like-minded people, like finding people who also like see the issues, and then perhaps like you find like pain points, right? So where in your community is there like places where like you're like, wow, this is not good for us, like let's improve this. Like if you see a data center being built near you and you know that's going to impact your water, you know that's going to impact your quality of life, right? Getting those people to rally against it, and then seeing who has the power in like your local government and so forth to make a change, and then we can start applying pressure in like a lot of different ways to them. I feel like that's like the basic of it. Like it's more nuanced than that, like, and it depends on where you're at and what the issue is, right? But like overall, like those are the general steps.
And Eduardo, if you're a leader in the opposite power dynamic, like if the PR people are protesting for you to like make water available for your community, how do you respond as a leader? Like, what are your options as a leader?
I want to second what Liv says. Get with my like-minded people, identify the issues, the resolutions, and put pressure on the representative that is obligated, or vote them out. As a leader, it depends on if you are in a position forever, like your job is to be a manager or a supervisor, or if it's temporary, like a city council member or a mayor or a governor. Of course, some are democratic positions, some are appointed. If you're an appointed leader, then you kind of are, you do your best to do what got you there and report back on what you expect the future to be. That's if you're an appointed leader. If you're an elected leader and you want to continue the work of your people, you listen to your people. And then if you finish your term and somebody has to be a leader, then you would attempt to bring someone on from the community that you are sympathetic to, or from the communities that you are sympathetic to. And that's something that you can see on TV. Like you have, even in national politics, you have the president and the vice president, and the vice president is, kind of being trained to become the next president, if it could be. You see it from both of the dominant parties. And if you're an appointed person, well, then it lasts until the next administration. Is that kind of what you were thinking of, Sanjay, or thinking more of
Yeah.
the organizational tools to actually be in alignment and in harmony with the
No,
people which you are the leader of?
I was thinking like in terms of if as a leader you feel helpless and you feel like you also don't have any options, and you still want to like your intentions are pure, like you want to serve, you want to provide, like how do you deal with international dynamics, like while you're also having to care for your community of like 2,000 people.
I'll defer to Liv's answer of finding like-minded people
Yeah.
with an international capacity. Not all of us can travel to other states or to other countries. I've never left even the United States other than to go home to the border.
Yeah.
I have been to Canada, I have been to Colombia, I have been to Europe. So the way I would outreach to international partners would be exactly what Liv said. Try to be in spaces in which they are going to be. And San Antonio is an international city and becoming one. And we have multimedia outlets that have a broad reach. I've met people that work in Mexico City, other people that travel to Canada. And so that's how it begins. And it's what Liv said, find like-minded people, find the pressure points, try to get them aligned in a winning strategy. And they will, if they want to become organizers and they're committed, they will find it fulfilling. And I think it's a very human thing. Do you hear that, my son?
I can hear it.
But yeah, I think it's you build power slowly with love and care, and it's a forever type of thing. And if it's not forever, it will come calling back to you. And I think that's the power of community.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that makes sense, and I think as a leader, I've heard from someone that you have to pick up the phone and call, and keep calling more people and more people until you finally find help, because your people, really depend on you, and you have to make sure that you are providing resources, and there's a responsibility that comes with being a leader, and
You have to
what,
build institutions
yeah.
of leadership and capacity. Sorry, I didn't mean to interject. Yeah, leaders build institutions in organization. Otherwise, yeah, how do you manage and delegate the work is through an organization.
Yeah, and sometimes like you just have to maybe use AI to the best of your abilities to find solutions that can provide for the next day, or you should start preparing for the next year. Like if it takes drilling a well, a new well, deeper well, maybe that's what you need, and you need to have like resources to be able to drill a well. You need to really go hands-on. Just you have to do the work to make sure that you're providing, and maybe drilling a well is the answer in the short term, and then in the long term you find like desalination plants and build use science that's worked in other deserted areas. There are a lot of desert communities, like Las Vegas is one of them. Built in Mojave Desert, a million. I don't think it's a million people, maybe a little less, but overall, the Metroplex is probably bigger than that. And you have casinos in Vegas who have done a great job of recycling the water. There are cities like is in Israel where they found like water like 100 feet deep in the desert. And I saw a story where they put fishes from a different ecological area which would survive in that water, and then that way they can, do their fish agriculture. So feel like our world, it's very it has lots of challenges for survival, but at the same time the planet provides, oh, mostly everywhere, like in every environment, like even in desert you
Yeah.
can find ways to um, do agriculture, some kind of agriculture. It may not be the same as other places, and you just have to like use resources to the best.
Yeah, that's something that kind of gives me hope too, is like seeing like creative ways that we're using resources that like we haven't really seen before, and knowing that like, well, in some areas, in some instances, like this can be replicated. So where one group of people feels like a pain point, we could see what they do and then continue to like build, you know?
Yeah, like the whole
What
like
there's concepts of equilibrium, right? Like there's a concept of minimizing the damage and you're just surviving. There's a concept of being in equilibrium, which is what you take is what you give. And then there is an example of flourishing, which is that you are able to use nature the way it's intended. You know, nature is bountiful if left alone. And
Yeah.
humans are part of nature, a very intellectual form of life. And I think, why are we so exploitative when we can help nature thrive?
Yeah.
I look at water bodies, you know, you're made out of water, the ocean's made out of water, animals, fish, livestock are made out of water, and we are in a climate change world. And of course, we're not going to thrive in a world that's always changing.
Yeah.
yeah
And I think about what part of nature can we protect? If
and
you are drilling 100 feet deep, um, you have to be careful of contamination, of safety to people that have to fix equipment when it breaks. I think pumps are cool, and sometimes they break because of dirt and silt and the water that's down there. So I like to think like, is this technology to help us thrive, to help us survive, or to help us stay the same? Um,
Yeah, I feel like there's like two parts of this that like we really need to consider as like human beings. One of them is like we tend to look at ourselves as not being a part of nature when we are, like we work directly with nature, like even if like you don't see that because you're in like a city, but like you are part of the natural world, and that should be respected. But then also like, are we going to continue prioritizing industry over quality of life and the quality of like our environment?
yeah yeah I think I was also going to introduce a newer perspective of we have like last few years talked very heavily about immigration, and um, many things lead to people migrating from one place to another. Some are opportunities, sometimes it's just survival. And back in historical days when people used to live with like communities of like 50 or 100 people, and they would like have be a caravan which would like migrate from one place to another as they would find food and water, and then they would move to the next place and find food and water, and then they would just continue their journey. Um, and it's just something to do with like they're just following nature with the weather cycles, and um, and then they keep moving. And that's how, a lot of our ancestors like moved from different continents in search of food and shelter. And I think that should, as a person who lives in a distressed community of that's being impacted by war, you have to think about migration, like for not just for yourself, but if you're a leader, you have to think about your community and maybe start telling them like, hey, maybe we have to migrate in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
So whatever your belongings are, make sure you pack it, and then now we must migrate 50 miles from here where there is abundance of resources for now, and then maybe we'll have to migrate again. And it's just not uncommon for humans to do that. And at the same time, if you're a country who is has resources and is less impacted by this uh, conflict, maybe you should open up, your borders and let them like provide them relief, because it's the human thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with that, like, especially because like this conflict that we're seeing right now is one that like we're causing, and we're displacing people currently, and attacking infrastructure is like a huge part of that, right? So like to expect people to just stay where we've displaced them, like that's to me that's inhumane, right?
I want to say to that, thank you for bringing it up, is that that's totally normal. Even my own like Indian Native American ancestors traveled all across Texas because it's a very bountiful place. I also believe perhaps in the past the Middle East was a luscious uh forest place, and it got really popular so they used up all the water. And I wanted to say that that's what's happening in Texas. We have land, we have vegetation, we have poor regulatory controls, we have water. And I think that's why the richest people in America have interests in Texas, in North Texas, in South Texas, in Houston. I believe that's what's causing this kind of population explosion in my state,
Mm-hmm.
is the fact that we are resource rich, and this war is kind of highlighting that. Um yeah, the argument that we can win more by letting other people have less, it's flawed. I think
Yeah.
we can have more if we let other people have more, because nature has enough for everybody.
Yeah,
It's
and
just, yeah.
if we put people in positions where like they can like first have like their basic needs met and then like intellectually flourish, like the whole world could be better because we could have more minds like coming up with like new technology that could help us, right? Like we are
Yep.
seeing a lot of like technology advancements now that are like maybe concerning with the way that we're doing them with like data center, and I feel like AI concerns me as well, but like it doesn't have to be like that. Like we can consider humanity along with like all these like new technologies that we have, right? And I feel like we're not doing a great job of doing that currently.
Yeah, and part of I think the war, it was one of the data centers that Amazon had in Middle East was also impacted. I think somebody bombed Amazon's data center, and yeah, it's just, but data centers, when they build them, I actually designed one. Fun fact, I didn't design the whole thing, but like just my portion of it, small little task for a data center in Round Rock, Texas. And people don't realize, but these data centers are built for like nuclear bombs to be thrown on them and
Oh
won't
wow.
get it. So they all pretty much like every other data center, or maybe every data center is actually a nuclear shelter in some ways. So if if a nuclear thing happens, every university also has a nuclear bunker. Like people like I went to Texas A&M. I think A&M has two. UT Austin has two or three nuclear bunkers on campus. And whenever like UT Austin has to like change put another building, and the engineer has to look at the plans, and they're like, what's that bunker that we have to build over and the foundation of this bunker? So that happens quite a lot. And then these data centers, the walls are like really really thick, like concrete walls that protect these infrastructure from any kind of like nuclear explosion. And that's the kind of, because they know that they are target. But at the same time, when we build our water infrastructure, we never design it to like even have a wall which would blast a small like tiny bomb. So maybe people who are designing water infrastructure, wastewater infrastructure, maybe in outside US, maybe think about that. Like, how can you build walls which protect you from um, any kind of explosion? Because it's just the reality of the world we live in now. There is going to be a war everywhere, every time. There will be fear, and you have to design for that. Um, Speaking of data centers, we've covered data centers in San Marcos in this podcast last year. And since then, major updates have happened. Communities came together to protest against the data centers. I was watching news, and one of the data center in San Marcos said they would create 10 jobs for the local community. And I feel like maybe it's a selling point um, mismatch from these companies that don't realize what communities want, or I don't know what, where there's this gap happening. But for first, Edward, like what's wrong with the approach that these current data center companies are taking while they're coming to communities like San Marcos, which are like on Edwards Aquifer, super preserved, Texas State University. The land's like pretty sacred. People go for like tubing there. They love their water. Like, what are they missing? Like, if you're talking to an executive who lives in like California and he doesn't care about the little small town called San Marcos, and they just think that they'll let them build a data center. What's the miscommunication here?
What you said is true, is that they're detached from the consequences of construction. Data centers use up a lot of energy, they use up a lot of water. And this is with the context of we live in an energy era where it pollutes the world. We have maintenance practices that are not working. And when we use intensive enterprises and industry, they are winning a battle that's going to happen in the future. I think you said it yourself. The future is currently being imagined by people that it will be volatile, um, confusing, and less resourceful. Like, we will be poorer. And I think that's the fear that the CEO is detached from. And I think the data centers, not to give them a way to get developed, but you need to be conscious of every person that has fear. Development is supposed to be a private enterprise. In America, we believe in like liberty, privacy, and happiness and infinite growth. But some people are afraid. that their rights and their communities and towns are being seen as just a place to build and
Mhm.
make business and get rich. And that is not, maybe on TV that makes sense, but if you go to San Marcos, that doesn't make sense. And it's just
Yeah.
that alignment with the people that you will be impacting. Like they're people. They're not Americans. They're people. Like they
Yeah.
just happen to be American, but we're all unique with unique fears and unique perspectives in the future. And I think that's what is different, is our vision of the future is different. The data center developers, however many there are, they have a vision of the future. It could be similar or different than other people, but there's a lot of perspectives on what data centers will do, what data centers currently do, and how impactful it will be. Um, the fact that they're all happening at around the same time is just, it makes people be critical and
Yeah.
scrutinize it. And I just think that when people have a dialogue and you want to bring, and you want them to be okay, you have to get into that dialogue. And if it happens at the city council chambers, well, then that's what happens.
Yeah, I feel like also like what I've personally seen with like the builders for like these data centers is like the way that like if let's say like you're planning on building responsibly, if there's a way to do that, the way that they've been like speaking to the public when the public arrives with like honest concerns that like make sense, right, for their communities, they're like, well, we already got the permits and we already put so much money into this, we have to build. It's like you think someone who has property, community, and lives in these areas, like that's not the way to speak to them about your current project. And this growth like doesn't affect everybody equally or the same way, right? Like it's and we see that with like the way America like is doing like imperial like ventures, right? Going to other countries to take resources. Like it's good for some people, right? But like it disproportionately negatively affects others. And that's something that I feel like we're seeing on like smaller scales within the United States too, with like communities and data centers, for examples.
So I recently saw this new concept of a data center. So like I talked about how these data centers are like overprotective of their boundaries and they want like isolated areas where they don't want to interact with the community for reasons like, oh, we're like want to be secure. But what if there's some developer came up with like a thing called mixed use data center? What it essentially means, you have data center or on like the ground floor, first floor, second floor, and then you have an apartment community on the fourth, fifth, sixth floor, and then you have a parking garage on third and fourth floor. And basically, uh, more smaller data center on the first floor, but you're creating a community on top. Um, Essentially somehow subsidizing the cost of the renters in the apartment building, solving a problem of affordability around renting, because right now we are all paying like third of our salary to half in some areas to
Mm.
rent or mortgage. Like, do you have to be like nuclear proof data center and not have any jobs created for locals in your area, or would you rather like create solutions around affordability and support the local economy? Like, why always think about like profiteering? I mean, I feel like now some data centers are coming to terms with like, okay, we'll pay the fair rate of the utility and try to like, still not there yet, but trying to talk about it. But there's still a long discussion left around like, how are you going to support the community, right, Eduardo? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the question is why did they get so big all of a sudden when we don't need them to be as big as they've designed them? That was the very first question. And the second question is yes, what is the benefit of to the people that are there? The big problem was their size. Their size was completely overwhelming to a small community, and it kind of really did seem like a cash grab or a resource grab. Um, and that will polarize people. So I would say exactly what you said, Sanjay, is like, are these data centers fitted to people's lives so they can also benefit from them? Um, because, yeah, they are huge buildings.
Yeah, I mean, something I would well, I feel like the utility part of that is good, right? Like, because one of the things that like has been brought up is like when you're building and you're using like public infrastructure and like the public is not getting anything back from that, like that's a conversation that maybe that could we could have like some sort of compromise on. But another question I would have is like, would there still be a lot of noise pollution? Because if you're living right above a data center, like the noise pollution, it also affects like your quality of life. Like it has like actual like physiological effects on people and animals, you know. So I would have some skepticism around that.
Yeah, I think that would be something like the executives need to think about is how do you like so the one that I worked on in Round Rock, we had done a noise study. So essentially means you take a noise meter and then you walk around the data center campus and and you see like how much noise it's creating. And part of the wall that I was talking about, like it also protects from the noise pollution. Like you just build it taller and then you
Hmm.
hope that the noise won't go into the community. So previously, they've built it like in areas which were already like zoned for commercial, but recently, what like last 1 year, we've been seeing that they're just like sprawling everywhere, like literally in your backyard. And
Hmm.
um, like quite literally, there are people's backyards are like facing a data center. And then you could like build the walls higher, but if you like literally like the wall is such a polarizing symbol, like you build a wall higher and you're like are you protecting the community from the noise, are you or you're like keeping them out, like
Yeah.
that barrier is it is as much as it's a philosophical challenge, it's a design challenge. And also that's what like is something that needs to like be really thought, like how are you like are you going to teach the community on how to repair a data center, like electrician jobs, um, the other jobs that might be in needed once it's
Yeah.
completely built? Um, how do you bring the community in versus keep them out? Like that's a very big moral compass, right?
I think the big issue for me is really water use. Um, Commercial water use is very large as a it's been normalized how
Yeah.
much water gets used in large industry and agriculture, and w- that's where the technology I want to improve the water technology, because the water use technology is just very dominating, but water protection technology and water storage, and that's, yeah, we have less and less water, and data centers are an innovative way to use a ton of it. I just
Hmm.
I think that we were talking about water law, and it's like use it or lose it. And so
Yeah.
you add data centers to this form of water restrictions, like it encourages data centers to use more and more and more. That's a race to the bottom. That's so obvious to me that it's
Yeah.
absurd that anybody would feel compelled to try to establish that form of um, industry in this state. No, like I just
Yeah.
refuse. And the more I'm reminded about that, the more I'm galvanized in the perspective that we are in a water war. I was sharing to you that what's happening right now in Iran, that's just today. We've had a 50-year siege of the Middle East, and it is about water. It's always been about water. Um, and I think that this is only an expression of industry at an advantage, because any reasonable being would not propose it. But there are unreasonable beings seeing water as a form of profit, and that's just not normal. It's really inhumane.
Yeah.
And
Oh, sorry.
now I would take us in a different direction. So let's close your thought first.
Oh, no, I was just going to add on that, like, we are seeing like water vulnerable communities having data centers like here in Texas. But then, I mean, part of that is like our regulations, right? But then, like, the waters are the data centers that were hit in the Middle East were in Bahrain and Dubai. Dubai, I believe, is also like American industry, like positive compared to like most places over there, right? And then um all these places are also like having water issues as well. So like just where we're building is also impactful.
Yeah.
Like
And
Corpus
so
Christi is running out of water. We want to build
yeah.
data
Yeah.
centers in San Antonio. Like, why don't we just help out
Okay.
our Texans? That's kind of how I see it.
So here's something I think people who are like Eduardo and me, like, we made a mistake. Like, let me phrase it in a way best way possible. But
Mhm.
the mistake we made was we graduated from the elite institutions like A&M and UT Austin, and then we took jobs, and then we were asked to prepare reports on let's say water availability, right? So water availability in Texas. So the governor of Texas allowed Texas Water Development Board to make water plan. It's a 5 year or 10 year cycle. It renews every 5 or 10 years, the water plan. It's statewide, and then it is based on regions. So there are like 10, 12 regions that have had the privilege to study many of these reports. And um, I don't want to criticize. I mean, I'm criticizing ourselves. So I think maybe it's not like it's like self-deprecating in a way. Like maybe I should have done a better job. Maybe Eduardo, like people like us, should have done a better job. Like we made these water plans, and then in places like um, deserted areas, like um, for example, Wichita Falls, like no, the city of Wichita Falls. I think it's like up north, um, in a desert, like literally in a desert, has faced issue, has one of the few desal plants in Texas, and faced like water shortages, day zero conditions, everything. And in that region's water plan, the state and the engineer who signed on it, and as the scientist who read that report, they showed water availability for the next 50, 100 or 50 years. They said there's going to be a water availability for the next 50 years. It's one of the few areas where there is no groundwater conservation district. I've had the fortune to submit a report to data center companies saying that if you are looking for a data center, maybe that's your place because even though it's a desert, there's no groundwater conservation district. You're allowed to pump as much as you want. The state water
Mhm.
plan shows that there's water. So there's just like I call it fault in our stars, or like the dishonesty that professionals have committed knowingly or unknowingly. I just feel like it's not something that I don't think see any insidious behavior or anything.
Yeah,
There's just been like something we did wrong. Like it was
yeah,
people like me and Eduardo who have these privileged positions to write these reports, and we tell the data center companies by writing these reports like, hey, Texas has a lot of water, and these deserted areas have a lot of water. There is no groundwater conservation district. You can pump as much as you want. Um, the dams are full of water. Even though, like, so that one of the issues is like these things are not live. Like the data, like for example, the dam might be empty, but the water plan was written 5 years ago, so it shows like for the next 50 years there's plenty of water.
right.
So it's absurd that we do that as professionals who like in our head we want like uh, less less abuse of our communities, but at the same time uh, we sign off on these things. Eduardo, thoughts? I see your hand raised.
Yeah,
Am
that's
I?
the technology I'm talking about. It's in visualization. And it's easy to look at the water on the surface and you can see the lake levels and the dam levels. We got that. We can do that. The technology I would like to help with, oh my goodness, what happened? Okay. Yeah, the technology I would like to help with is in visualizing the water levels underground, like basically the water table. I want to learn to create visualizations for like a real time water table tracker or water table model that
Mm,
can really highlight where are we at, like how
yeah,
deep do we need to drill. And I understand that this is like when you're talking about water resources and infrastructure information, it's like a homeland security problem. But if you ask me, it's about the fear of knowledge and the fear of people actually being kind to one another. Like people don't believe that knowledge is power sometimes. And that's kind of my special interest is how can we visualize the water table? Because we see the surface, but it's hard to check like what's really going on underneath. Yeah.
Yeah. So first, in Texas, you can like the Texas Water Development Board and TCEQ both allow you to like download the well reports for any of the wells in the whole state, and you can see like what the data has shows. But it's not like they didn't do a great job like making it the best like visual tool for the communities. They made it the best tool possible for the industries because industries can spend money to hire someone who can go through the
mm.
logs and like give them a report, someone like me. But live like what was the reaction like to learning like professionals who care about this? They also are often the ones who caused this.
Well, I feel like we should expect human things to happen among humans, right? Like, so I'm not I'm not like mad or anything, but I do think that like when we see data centers being like we're seeing an increase in infrastructure that needs water, right? So the fact that like our state and our country is not like adapting to this and not being like, okay, let's run another report. If we don't have like any sort of like live monitoring like technologies like Eduardo was like talking about, right? Like we could at the very minimum see like, okay, we're seeing like big changes within how we're using water, why aren't we doing things to adapt to that and then change strategy? You know what I mean? That's something that I think Eduardo and I could actually probably try to like ask for from our government. We could organize around that potentially, because that's something that we could then use that information, that data, right? Because knowledge is power. We could use that to be like, okay, what are some demands that we could make? What are some ways that like we could then hold companies and government accountable?
And even practice some form of regulation, like, well, if this happens, then we don't want that. But if there's water, well, then yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Not that I can say that, but I think
yeah,
it
yeah,
will enhance the discussion.
yeah. And then like from there, we could then develop like a good plan for like what we can do around like development of data centers and water usage within like on an individual capacity as well, right? There there are options available to us, but if we don't know where we're at, like how can we explore those options?
Yeah. And I think it brings me back to like communities development, and then, for example, like what we're doing is like community journalism, like
Hmm.
like telling people, but also we need like community science, like people who are knowledgeable in like, for example, data science. If you're really good at like programming or visualization, making tools that are visualization friendly, um, you should like, and if you're like a translator who can translate in multiple languages, and we need to build that like foundation where science can be like translated from data which is available to like somebody who can visualize it, somebody who can translate it to like uh, Spanish or other languages. And that's why, because the state is not going to do it for us. they
Yeah,
they literally run on 5-year planning cycles or 10-year cycles, which is way like in terms of water, like when you every other year is a drought year in Texas, and you're running on 5-10-year cycles saying you have water 50 years from now, like projecting surplus. You can clearly see, like based on their actions, that they're not going to be providing us the tools that we need, right?
yeah.
Sanjay, I would like, well, thank you for calling this like community journalism. I didn't think about it that way, but it is. Yeah. I mean, it's
Yeah.
powerful.
And what are some like future like ongoing projects that you guys are concerned about? I think Guadalajara Ranch kind of is at this point. I mean, the TCEQ's already approved it. Um,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, it is like I think Greater Edwards Aquifer Authority is still pursuing it, trying to fight it. But like, other what other projects you guys are concerned about?
Mm. So I
I'm,
mean, oh,
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Liv. No, you.
No, I know that we started talk about like the rate hikes, right? Like data
Yeah.
centers are something that I was going to circle back with sometime with Eduardo about, because from I've heard that there's plans to build one like right next to me. I live on the far west side of San Antonio, so um that's in my like backyard, right? So that's something that I wanted to have like a discussion about, but I don't have enough details currently, right? And then yeah, those are like the big ones that I think we've talked about. Do you have more, Eduardo?
I think that what's far west, probably Microsoft data center, because I think I was involved in some of the early like talks about some of these, because I saw the map of like where they were building when
Mm-hmm.
they like where I was working this, and I think I can talk more now that I don't work there anymore. But
Mm-hmm.
like I saw the map, and I was like a data center next to like a HOA, and I was like, what's going? It's like and next to a creek, so like they are so. So first thing that a data center needs is a creek which they can discharge into, and
Mhm.
um, community from which they can withdraw the water because there's already a connection, so they don't have to spend more on like putting up a pipe and all that. So like those two things are so antithetical to like like the suburban way of life that
Yeah.
we've come to like enjoy, know about. Our parents like lived in that atmosphere, like where suburbs were like, okay, this is community, suburbs. And now the data centers like, no, 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 that's too comfortable. We want to build right next to you because you already have a water connection and you have a creek where I can discharge to, so you can no longer play in that creek and your utility rates will go up.
Yeah, and I mean another part of this like that I personally consider because um I work on robotics, right? And my husband, he does facility maintenance for like a large warehouse. And so like people are like, "Oh yeah, like there's going to be like jobs available," but like there's going to be like a few jobs like for someone like my husband, like yeah, there's a job available because you need someone to maintain like a building, right?
Yeah.
But like compared like as far as like community wide, like that's not a lot for like what we're giving in like utilities and like sometimes like maintenance for like the streets, things like that.
I'll
Yeah,
add
because they
on to
yeah.
Liv's. Go ahead, Sanjay.
No, I was just pointing that they always have like this insider deal with the local politician on like their tax rate. That it's always going to be lower than everyone else. Like,
Yeah.
just pay their fair share. Like, what's wrong with that?
Yeah, no, it's also like something that like we don't really have access to. Um like you're not gonna find out like what these large companies are paying for utilities. Like you can Google like a general rate, but like what they actually pay, like in particular, like we don't know about.
Mm.
On
Go
the
ahead.
job creation front, I believe what Liv said. I believe that ma- my dad is a maintenance a worker, so his whole
Mhm.
life takes he would fix machines that are like on the conveyor belts
Yeah,
of like
same.
people that like for HEB, things that package food or prepare food or cook food so they can be packaged and put on the grocery stores. So that's kind of what my how I grew up with my dad being a maintenance technician. And typically they are trying to have the operators just fix the machines if they can. If then they'll get a maintenance mechanic, and then if the maintenance mechanic can't fix it, then they'll get an engineer. So like recently I heard about these technology companies like Oracle laying off thousands of workers and then um applying for international visas for people to come in and work H1Bs, which are, as like like secondary education requiring from other countries, which is great, but it comes at the expense of local skills and local techniques, and the jobs that you find more actually require that the jobs that are more out there to gain, they pay you less, and every year they pay less. So I just wanted to add that when it comes to new technologies, usually it's to have less workers. That's what
Mhm.
technology is usually defined as, automation. So that's the point I wanted to make on that. But my current projects is something like this, like community journaling, community archiving. This is one way to archive this conversation. I'm working on a zine that did not exist before, and we want to make that a recurring project, although it is a very exhausting project. So kind of like community journaling, getting people's ideas out and published so people can look at them and research them later. Um, my other more environmentally direct engagements, we met Daniel Liv
Yeah.
and I met Daniel, and we live in the same neighborhood. He identified a large plot of land that is undeveloped. He suggested that we write a letter to the owner and invite them to talk about ways to preserve it in light of many interests probably wanting to develop it or wanting to come up with reasonable ideas and an offer basically of how much the land is worth. And so we want to intercept that conversation with one of our large landowning neighbors. And the other project is the eco-socialism kind of group that we are trying to make happen, and having a direct voice, a direct and cohesive voice in to let our representatives know the ways that uh, we can preserve our green spaces. San Antonio doesn't have a whole lot of sidewalk,
No.
so or like canopy, and these are parts of development that produce impervious cover and increase runoff, but there is a way to improve our city. If people are not walking, they're not enjoying it, and if they're not enjoying it, they're not going to protect it.
Yeah,
Uh,
that would also help with like not creating like such a vast like I think it's called like a heat desert, like where so
Yeah.
much heat is conglomerated within the city, you know?
Yeah, I was thinking about the canopy one, Eduardo. Like, I would suggest have them think about like tree canopies instead of the usual like bus shelter stuff. Just like, because I feel like it's the same thing. You essentially just plant more trees and they provide you canopy and shade. That's very simple.
and they
Because
also do evapotranspiration, which is the
yeah,
actual way to cool.
yeah, it's just like I feel like all our problems can be solved if we just had more trees.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
And more water protections and more trees, because
yeah,
even trees and vegetation help rainfall infiltrate into our aquifer. So trees as infrastructure is a
Mhm.
very interesting
yeah,
uh, topic for
and
me.
and if you have trees, you may not need a concrete sidewalk. You could just build a trail next to it. So it just you, so many like I feel like our construction industry has like developed like these solutions, like cookie cutter solutions, like hey, 5 foot by 5 foot sidewalk, and hey, there's like 20 feet wide canopy for bus. And we just like get find like, oh, we need these two things to like solve our problems. But no, we don't need those two things. We need more trees, more trails. Yeah, I should just like get a t-shirt, so more trees and more trails.
Well, this all fits under the umbrella of low impact development. And this is true
Yeah.
for data centers too, is we don't need to maximize profit. We just need to build them so that we reduce impact on the rest of our, ecology. So I like, yeah, there is a connection and a concept of like low impact development and green infrastructure. Like this is it's right there, ready for us to pounce on it. That's how I feel. We just need a lot of design, really good designers
Yeah.
with holistic perspectives on what it means to enjoy nature and what it
And
costs to enjoy it.
And if I was like one of these like data center designers, I would just, go into these community meetings, be like, hey, I'm going to make a mixed use one. I'm gonna have like trees all around my property. Like if I cut like five, I'm gonna plant like 1,000 trees or like 100 trees um next in this area that will prevent you from like noise pollution, and also will like give you the shade and all the benefits that come with it. It's just like also it's just like so like the schools, universities like A&M and UT Austin. I mean, I love A&M and UT Austin, both of them, but like they've taught us like, hey, this is the way to develop. No, it's not like development doesn't have to include 1,000 metric tons of concrete every single time. It has to include like 1,000 trees every single time, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, and yeah, San Antonio, and then Corpus Christi, man, that problem's just so mind blowing that I saw that governor was saying that the state is gonna take over the municipality and run Corpus Christi. It's just unprecedented. I've never heard of anything like that. Um, yeah, what can Corpus do, Eduardo?
Um, yeah. How long are we gonna run the the meeting? But also, I think Corpus needs all our help. I don't
Mm.
have any idea what they can do at the moment. Um, as far as the governor taking over a city, I don't know what that means. I think the mayor is being sued for something. I just
Yeah.
do not have a way to opine on so many things occurring at once.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time that they've been dealing with this like issue, right? And they, from what
Yeah.
I understand, like they haven't really taken action in meaningful ways.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like people are just, I think, used to be saying that, hey, we'll just drink bottled water. And so I think that's one of the gaps. I mean, a lot of people are arguing for a desal plant, and but at the same time, a lot of people are like, hey, we'll just buy water. Um, but Eduardo, you had a poem for us. Do you still have it?
Yeah, I wanted to share this poem um, to kind of reflect my feelings on the first topic we talked about, which is like war and water. And coming out, when I think of data centers, I think of like Palantir, who is tracking, and the CIA and the military and our government is using it to defend our country. And it's kind of hard to express your emotions and your feelings, and that's kind of what this poem is about. It's called Smile. um it goes like this: living in the shadows, can you imagine what kind of life it is to live in the shadows? People see you as happy and free because that's what you want them to see. Living two lives, happy but not free. You live in the shadows for fear of someone hurting your family or the person you love. The world is changing and they say it's time to be free, but you live in the fear of just being me. Living in the shadows feels like a safe place to be. No harm for them, no harm for me. But life is short and it's time to be free. Love who you love because life isn't guaranteed. Smile. And that is a poem by Gloria Carter. And I heard it in a Jay-Z poem, in a Jay-Z song called Smile from his album 444. Just wanted to share that with people.
Yeah.
444 is an underrated album. I think it's a more recent one, but
I like it a
I'll-
lot. And yeah, and with that, I just wanted to conclude the show. Sanjay, would you let us off?
yes, thank you all for joining, and you guys have a wonderful day, wonderful weekend, and may the water gods be with us.
Bye. Have